What's up guys, welcome to another video, and check that out. That was installed the other day on my lovely tiles that you saw me doing last week, and it is roaring away. I love it. It's made me not want to leave this room. So cosy. But there we go. Sorry there was no video yesterday on Thursday. We had a pretty difficult, pretty upsetting and traumatic kind of family funeral yesterday, which was really hard. But you know, whenever these kind of things happen, whenever something like that happens in my life, I always try to find a way to make it into a positive, try to find something positive to take from it. And it's really difficult when stuff like that happens, but it kind of, we as a family have obviously tried to do some stuff to, I don't know, rebuild some family ties that might be broken. We started that process. We just got to take something positive away from a day that otherwise would have been very, very difficult. And I thought for today's video, expanding on that theme slightly, I'd talk about how Formula One teams do that. Because, when you're involved in a sport, any sport, I imagine, a competitive sport, there are highs and there are lows. You have good days, you have bad days. You have days when you win a Grand Prix, which are amazing. The most incredible feeling to be part of a team that has won a Grand Prix. Incredible. But you have days that clearly don't go that well. And so what do you do as a Formula One team? How do you turn those around? How do you get over them? So that's what I thought we'd talk about. And we're going to do that out on a dog walk, because these guys are waiting to go out in the snow for a walk. So I thought we'd have a chat about that on the way. You want to go for a walk, buddy? You want to go for a walk? Should we go for a walk? Yeah, okay, let's go for a walk. See you in a moment. So today was the first day that Pharrell's really seen snow. It's quite interesting watching him go out this morning. Just as he went out the back door, stopped and just had a good look around, because he didn't know what on earth had happened to this familiar place that he's so used to, as in our back garden. Anyway, he's got a bit used to it now. He quite likes jumping around in it and eating it as well. Anyway, look, before we carry on, I just want to make it absolutely clear that in talking about disappointment at Formula One teams after a bad race and that kind of thing, I am in no way, obviously, comparing that level of sadness or disappointment to the loss of a family member. I'm just using the latter of those two as a springboard to get onto this subject, that's all. When we're talking about Formula One teams and sport, I guess you could apply this to sports teams in general. You could probably apply it to businesses and actually in most of our daily lives. If you have a kind of knockback or a disappointment, something that didn't go the way you hoped or the way you planned, people often ask me, this is a question that comes up quite a lot in the talks that I give. It's quite easy, or comparatively easy, to motivate yourself or motivate your team when things are going well, isn't it? Because you can refer to successes, you can taste the champagne every now and again, and that's what keeps you going. But what about when things are going badly? And I always say to people, look, there was one thing that Ron Dennis said to us when I was at the team, and if we'd had a bad day, if we'd had a race that ended in terrible disappointment for whatever the reason, Ron would always say to us, and it used to make me laugh at the time, we all used to chuckle at him, thinking it was a bit of like an Eric Cantona-esque comment.
When the seagulls follow the trawler, it's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you.
But he used to say, look, when we have a bad race on a Sunday afternoon, he said, we reflect on it on Sunday, of course, on the Sunday evening, we debrief, we delve into the reasons and all the rest of it. And then we go to bed on Sunday night. He said, and I give myself the time, I allow myself the time between waking up on a Monday morning, swinging my feet out of the side of the bed and putting them into my slippers on the floor. He said, that's the only time on a Monday I will allow myself to dwell on what's gone before. And he said, after that moment, it's all about looking forward to the next Grand Prix. And it was a bit like the old seagulls following the fishing trawler. We used to take the piss out of him, if I'm really honest. with stuff like that. But when you look back on it, and actually I've reflected on that over the years, and it makes an awful lot of sense. What he's saying is, yes, we look back and we analyse, particularly in Formula One, in the level of attention to detail that we do everything in Formula One. We analyse what went wrong. We look at the data. We look at the reasons for the failure, if it was a failure, the reasons for the mistake, if indeed that's what it was. And then we take that data, we take that learning and understanding, and we analyse it, and very, very quickly we have to start focusing all of that not on the disappointment, not on what's happened and what we could have had, but now focusing on the next opportunity, which for us is probably the next Grand Prix. I've talked on here in the past about change and dealing with change and how we kind of approach the subject of change in our lives and in Formula One and everything else. A knockback or a setback or a disappointment, some sad situation, can absolutely enforce a change, or it can be catalyst for a change. And actually that change can be seen as a huge opportunity, and in fact should be seen as a huge opportunity. So when Ron Dennis used to say to us, look, deal with it on Sunday night, Monday morning we immediately get focused on the next opportunity. What he was saying was, let's find out, let's delve into the failure, let's delve into the mistake, delve into the bad decision, whatever it was that led to this disappointing result. Let's delve into that, in that attention to detail that we do best. So dig deeper than we've ever dug before into what went wrong. Not to point the finger and find somebody to blame, not for any of those reasons, not to kind of dwell on that disappointment and to make everybody sad and upset, but to find a way to turn the disappointment into an opportunity. Because if we look hard enough into a failure, if we analyse it, thoroughly enough, if we use the tools that we have best at our disposal in Formula One thoroughly enough, well, from that failure there'll be a reason for it, and because there's a reason, we can find a way to make sure that failure doesn't happen again, or make sure that disappointment doesn't happen again, make sure that chain of events that led to the failure doesn't happen again. And that is the thing that successful sports teams, or teams in general, are able to do best. Because if you'd never had the failure in the first place, you would have never looked into that depth in that particular area, and maybe you'd have never found the opportunity that may eventually come from it. So actually sometimes from the failures, from the disappointments, can come the biggest opportunity that you may have never otherwise had if you hadn't had that failure in the first place. Failure, although disappointing at that moment, can actually end up being one of the biggest opportunities you will ever find yourself presented with, if you deal with it correctly. People always used to say to me when we had a bad pit stop, if somebody in the pit stop struggled to get the wheel on or get the wheel off, people used to say to me, was that the last pit stop that guy ever did? Does somebody immediately get sacked in that kind of situation? And of course the answer to that is no, they don't. The person who may have had the issue, or may have struggled in a pit stop, or may have come up against some problem that meant he wasn't able to do his job properly, whether it was simply a human mistake or a problem with a part of the kit, almost doesn't matter. If he's had a problem, that person is actually probably the key person, the most key person, who should be central to finding the solution and making sure that doesn't happen again. So the person who is at the heart of any failure or any mistake, in my view, and certainly the view that we took at McLaren, was that they should be at the absolute centre point of where the team goes next, how we deal with the disappointment, how we understand what happened. Nobody knows better what happened than that guy who had the problem. So instead of pointing the finger at that person, it's embracing that person, putting your arm around that person, helping them and supporting them if they need the support. And that happened quite a lot. People had some really struggle sometimes to deal with the disappointment of a pit stop failure and how that then impacted the team. To the point where people sometimes needed emotional, psychological support. It's a high pressure environment, and when something like that goes wrong, it can really have an impact. But then that person has to be made to feel like they are absolutely central to the solution, that their experience and their knowledge and their understanding is being valued, is absolutely valued, because without them, how does a team move forward? How do we overcome the problem? How do we make sure it can't happen again? How do we design a solution that means that that will not happen again? That was how we dealt with it at McLaren. And I think it's a valuable kind of lesson just generally in life. We can apply it to most things, in business or in life in general. It's a Mexican standoff. When I was trying to break into Formula One as a mechanic, trying to achieve my dream, trying to get my dream job, as it had been for years, I was writing to all the Formula One teams on an almost weekly basis. And as a result, I was getting rejection letters back through the post on an almost weekly basis as well. I've still got a stack of them at home. Every single one telling me I didn't have enough experience, or they would keep my name, my details on file for any future opportunities. You know, the standard stock letter basically trying to let you down gently. And it would have been easy to take that as a massive knockback and constant rejection and kind of give up. But I didn't see it like that. I saw it the opposite of that. I saw it as a kind of kick up the backside to say, you know, this is a challenge now for me. I've got so many rejection letters all the time coming through. I am not going to give up until I get a different type of letter through the post. And that's what I kept doing. I kept taking the rejection information, the idea that said didn't have enough experience. So I'd go and get more experience. I would go and offer my services for free and do work experience at weekends with teams and in championships that I'd never worked in before, therefore increasing my experience or broadening my experience, trying desperately to make myself more attractive to a Formula One team, trying to gain the kind of experience that they might see as the sort of thing that they want to have within their Formula One team. And I kept doing that, and I kept getting the knockbacks, and I kept doing it more and more and more, and eventually one day I got a very different letter back through the post from McLaren. And the rest, I suppose, as they say, is history. But you know, through those knockbacks, through those disappointments, instead of just remaining disappointed for a long time, I was disappointed when I opened the envelope and I got a knockback. Of course I was, because I was hoping for a different answer. But when I started to look back on them, you know, I started to reflect on them. I saw them actually as a real catalyst for change. I started to find ways to do things differently, to find something that I could then do to change my approach that then might come up with a different solution or create a different outcome. And obviously in the end it worked. Somebody in the car park over here hooning around on the snow with a rear-wheel drive car. Oh, he's about to get told off. That's hilarious. That's the Ranger who's just told him off for messing about in his car in the car park. Look, sometimes it can be really, really hard to find some kind of positive from a really difficult or sad situation, like it was for us yesterday at this family funeral. Really, really struggled to see a positive in it, but you've got to find one. There is one. There's always something positive to come out of any situation. You've just got to find it. For us, it was, you know, as it often is with funerals and things, you bring your family together on an occasion It's a difficult and sad situation, sad occasion, but it's brought your family together from perhaps all over the world or all over the country, whereas otherwise you may not have all got together in any situation. So, you've got to take those kind of things from it. If you get a knockback at work, if you don't get the job that you were hoping for, if you lose your job, perhaps there's an opportunity to go off in a different direction that you would have never looked for or never taken if you hadn't had that knockback. There's a saying that says, everything happens for a reason. I don't know about that, but you can always find some way of turning a situation around. And if you don't do that, of course, you can plummet into this, horrible, desperate situation, which happens to many, many people. It's awful. I've seen it happen. It's a terrible situation to find yourself in. And I don't want anyone to sort of say, or to think that I'm being flippant here and saying, well, it's very easy to kind of say, find a positive in any situation. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's easy at all. I've had some awfully difficult situations in my life where I've had knockbacks, I've had massive disappointments, really sad situations, things where I've made mistakes, where I can't blame anybody but myself for those. Sometimes those situations are the hardest to try and turn it into a positive. But if you look hard enough, if you look for long enough, if you look deep enough, there will be a positive in there somewhere. You may not see it immediately, you may not see it for some time, but there will be one. If you can find it, it could be the start of something quite incredible, quite amazing for you that you would have never seen if it hadn't been for that disappointment or that failure or that mistake or that sad situation in the first place. So never stop looking for the positives. I hope that's the message that will come out of today's video. Right, I'm going back to that cosy warm fire and get out of this cold. Have a great weekend, guys. Keep your questions coming in, of course. Hashtag Ask Elvis for anything you want answered on Monday. But I hope whatever it is you're up to over the weekend, have fun. If you've got snow, enjoy it. If you haven't, enjoy it. And I'll see you next week. Cheers, guys.